The Diplomat recently released its third season of the show, and in my opinion, this was the best installment that it's ever given us. With it focusing on internal politics within relationships as much as the external international politics, it felt like the show adopted the tone of the TV series Succession, and I absolutely loved it. With an ending that showed that they could have quite literally triggered the likes of a World War III. The stakes have never been higher in a season of The Diplomat, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. So with that, I wanted to take a look at all that was out there, along with giving my theories and predictions on what I think could happen when the show returns. So let's get into it. Here is The Diplomat Season 4 Everything We Know. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The release date. When it comes to the release date of this season, that's something that's on all of our minds following the ending. First off, the question to truly look at and try and answer is there even going to be another season of The Diplomat? Well, the good news is, when Season 3 was commissioned, a fourth was ordered alongside it by Netflix, which means that we're guaranteed to be seeing more of Kate, Hal, Grace Penn and Prime Minister Trowbridge on our screens when it returns. The next question then is, when will the show be released? The best way to judge that is by looking at the previous seasons and making a prediction based on that, because it's currently unknown when the show will return as Netflix hasn't put a hard date on it. When looking back at the previous seasons of the show, Season 1 was released in April of 2023, Season 2 was released on the final day of October in 2024, and the most recent season, Season 3, was released on October the 16th of 2025. So the trend that it seems to follow is that it sticks to releasing one season a year, which is a good sign for us because it means that we might not need to wait that long. When taking that into consideration, I would predict that we'll most likely be getting the fourth season of the show in around a year's time. Seeing as though the past two have been in October, I think we could see it in October of next year. The only thing that I think could end up delaying it is that the story in the next season seems like it's going to be of a larger scale, which makes me think that with the more cast members and a larger story, it might delay filming slightly. So I think that could ultimately end up pushing it to an early 2027 release date. So it's most likely going to be one of those two timings, October of 2026 or early 2027. The story. I think the story in Season 4 of The Diplomat has the potential to be one of the largest that the show has ever had. I thought Season 3 was the best that the show had ever done, but I reckon Season 4 actually has the potential to top that. Within Season 3, we saw Kate battling with her mental state as she felt as though she was being pushed to the side. Her voice wasn't being heard and was essentially living in her husband Hal's shadow as he adopted the role of vice president, and for the first time in her career she was being overlooked and people were just valuing him more. I think this is something that will continue to carry through into the next season and we'll see her adopting that jealous trait that Grace's husband Todd has. A man that was now taking a career break as no matter what he did, he would never top the success that his wife had, as she was the president of the United States. With Grace and Hal using Kate as a pawn in their plan to take the Poseidon and betray the United Kingdom, I think we could well see her loyalties being tested towards her husband and her nation as tension begins to rise, as I imagine Russia will look to get involved in conversations about where their weapon ultimately ended up, with the United Kingdom most likely being blamed for the taking of it. Kate had finally realized that she was essentially jumping from one version of her husband to another version of her husband, and she came to the conclusion that she wanted Hal to take her back because she was now deeply in love with him. But now, with her most likely feeling used, her relationship with Prime Minister Trowbridge being damaged, and her feeling as though Hal totally disregarded her, I think we'll most likely see her distancing herself from her husband again. It seemed like she was actually going to become the true second lady and embrace the role, but that won't be happening anymore. With Callum Ellis being introduced to us in this season as well, and him being the individual that was essentially communicating with the person in Russia that was going against them, I think Kate might seek solace in his arms again as she'll probably confess all that Grace and Hal did to them. They kept secrets between each other in Season 3, so I don't see it being any different in the next season. Whilst the show is fictional, if it goes down the route that I think it could potentially go down with what could be considered a war on both sides of the globe commencing, I don't quite think it will, because the show is always about the diplomatic route. I think we'll most likely see Grace Penn's presidential tenure coming to an end, as she'll most likely be blamed for damaging relations with one of America's strongest allies. It'll probably come out that Grace Penn was also responsible for the attack on the HMS Courageous, and we'll see her reign come crumbling down. I think this could then cause the story to go in two different directions. The first is that with Grace Penn falling on her sword and most likely taking all of the blame for the Poseidon, that could then lead Hal to becoming the President of the United States and put him in one of the most powerful positions in the world. That would definitely make an extremely interesting end to the 4th season of the show. It would put the story in the show at a point where it had basically made the country an enemy to its closest ally and disrupted an already disruptive relationship with a nation that it's got a frosty history with. So Hal would have to navigate that space. This would then also lead Kate to be in a difficult position even more because she'd know that Hal was responsible for coming up with part of the plan, so would she stand by him? Or it could go in the other direction and lead the likes of Hal, Billy, Stuart, Idra, Kate, and Grace to all be investigated into as part of the team for the blaming of the attack on Rayburn, which would get looked into. Plus, they'd also be seen as the team that was involved in stealing the nuclear weapon from waters belonging to the United Kingdom, and they could well end up facing punishment for that, which, if Season 4 proves to be the final season of the show, it would provide a relatively dark ending to the story, and show that Kate's hunger for success could lead her to ultimately end up behind bars. When it comes to other characters in the show, I think we'll most likely see Idra and Stuart finally becoming closer and having some kind of personal relationship with one another. It's been on the cards for what feels like forever, but I think with Idra actually admitting that she didn't want him to leave and them being intimate with each other during the finale, we could well end up seeing them together, which is probably something that I'd like to see because it seems like they've got good chemistry and it would probably be one of the purest relationships in the show. The cast. When it comes to the cast of The Diplomat Season 4, with there not being any major deaths in the show in Season 3 other than Margaret Roylin, and the cast always being relatively contained and similar from season to season, I think it's safe to presume that we're going to see most of them returning. The only character from this season that I don't think will return will be Margaret Roylin. That means that we'll see Kate, Hal, Grace Penn, Todd Penn, Prime Minister Trowbridge, Billy, Idra, Stuart, Austin, Francis, and Callum Ellis all returning. I also think we're most likely going to be introduced to some other characters, as the stealing of the Poseidon that was carried out by the United States could well bring NATO into the equation. And it might also mean that we'll see some Russian counterparts too. So I think this could potentially have the most new cast members that we've ever had in a season. As well as the well-written story, the cast is what makes this show so strong. Within this season, Hal and Grace Penn carried it with the strong-minded nature that they had and the betrayal that they carried out, so I'm intrigued to see who'll steal the show next time round. Unfortunately for now, that's all that's known about Season 4 of The Diplomat, but I'm sure more information will get released as we draw ever closer to the release date. The good news is we know that another season is definitely on the way, so at least we won't be left on a cliffhanger for long. So for now, all we can do is theorize. So, there you have it, The Diplomat Season 4, Everything We Know. If you want to see Season 2 and Season 3 of The Diplomat being broken down, then check the playlist below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What do you think will happen next? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.